Low class. So yesterday we were discussing from the section where Pracetas have completed their and they ruled for some time. They had a illustrious son, Daksha, and then they are retired. They have been to forest. They were performing severe austerities. Narada Muni was very much happy with their set of austerities and then came to them. Then they received Narada Muni nicely. Then they requested Narada Muni to speak about Adhyatma Yoga, which they have heard from Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu, but they have forgotten by the influence of time. So for which now Narada Muni is responding, teaching Adhyatmika Yoga, which is very simple, very practical. We can also understand and implement in our day-to-day lives. Wherein Narada Muni was saying, yesterday we were discussing a couple of verses, Tad janma tani karmani, tad ayus tan mano vachaha. Dranam enahi vishwatma, sevate haririshwara. The birth, activities, lifespan, mind and words of human beings takes on the Supreme Lord, who is the soul of the entire universe. So everything that we possess, starting with birth, our activities, our intelligence, senses, strength, austerity, scriptural study, yoga, sankhya, sannyasa, brahmacharya, and all other items that we possess, they all become real. Matlab, they all will help us in our journey back home, back to Godhead only if we use them in the service of the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, all these things simply bind us. So from that point of view, Narada Muni is telling whatever we have, they become real only if we use them in the service of the Supreme Lord. Kim Janmabis Tribit Veha Shaukara Savitra Yagnikai Karmabirva Trayi Proktai Pumshovi Api Vudayusha. So somebody may have a question like what to speak of that. Okay, how can you say that like that? Then what about the Brahmanas? They go through elaborate procedure. Garbhadan Sanskar, birth, Jatakarma Samskar, then Upanand Samskar, then Vidya Part, Vidyabhyas, then there is Diksha. So they become qualified to perform Yajna. What about them? They are very much connected to Vedic literature. Narada says, still, even though family or Brahmanas family, but still, whatever they have, if that is not used in the service of the Supreme Lord, it is also useless. Even a person endowed with the lifespan of Indra, Chandra, Varuna, Vayu, even of that of Brahma, even one is situated in the Devaloka or Svargaloka or Brahmaloka, still, if one is not dedicating all one's activities to Supreme Lord, they are all simply useless. So, birth, even birth as an outcast with service to Supreme Lord is a proper human birth because it enables one to attain the Lord. So that kind of comparison is shown here. And then Shrutena tapasa vakim vachobis chitta vrittibi buddhya vakim nipunaya balendriya radasa. Without service to the Lord, what is the use of hearing scriptures like Vedanta, practicing austerity, becoming expert in discussions of the scriptures, and attaining the having great intelligence, becoming expert at performing things, having a lot of physical strength, sharpness of the senses? What is the use of all these things if all these things are not employed in the service of Supreme Lord? So Narada is telling that having something is not great, but employing whatever little we have in the service of the Supreme Lord is great. So this is the understanding of bhakti. So as we hear from Bhagavad Gita, yajnartat karmanam anyatra lokoyam karma bandhana. When we use everything in the service of yajna purusha, then there is no karma bandhan. Otherwise, whatever expertise we may have in this world, but every expertise will actually bind us in this material world. Then Narada Muni further continues. This is from today onwards. We'll discuss. Kimva yogena sankena nyasa swadhyaya yorapi kimva shreyo birannaischa na yatratma pradohari. Please read the translation.
Transcendental practices that do not ultimately help one realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead are useless. Be they mystic yoga practices, the analytical study of matter, severe austerity, the acceptance of sannyasa, or the study of Vedic literature. All these may be very important aspects of spiritual advancement, but unless one understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari, all these processes are useless.
What is the use of practicing Ashtanga Yoga? What is the use of practicing Sankhya Yoga or Jnana Yoga? What is the use of taking unto sannyas? What is the use of study of the Vedas or performing other auspicious activities in which the Lord does not give realization of himself? Na Atma Prada Hari. Ye etamam prapadyante tam staiva bhajamiham. To the extent we surrender to Supreme Lord about himself to us. So what is the use of becoming expert at performing something? Ultimately, when there is no realization of Supreme Lord. So like that. Yoga means Ashtanga Yoga. Other auspicious acts include vows, Chaturmasya vows and other vows, and also Vairagya. So what is the use of these things in which the Lord does not give realization of himself? So Nardam is telling that becoming expert at doing something is not so important in this world. But whatever we do expertly, that should lead us to the realization of the Supreme Lord. That is Adhyatma Yoga. So that's how Nardamuni says. The yogis and others do not attain realization of Paramatma by yoga and other process. The Lord does not give himself except by bhakti. So it is only by bhakti, even the karmis or the jnanis or yogis attain the expected results of their endeavor, and ultimately they will also realize the Supreme Lord. Just by hard yoga alone, one does not get anything. So like that, Bhagavatam also said in the past, here Nardamuni also indicating. Because the other processes lack bhakti and do not produce bhakti, they are useless. If anything that we perform without bhakti and if anything that we perform does not lead to bhakti, they are all useless. Doing something without bhakti is also useless. When we do something that is not taking us close to bhakti, that is also useless. On the other hand, if bhakti is present, by being mixed with bhakti, these processes become successful. They are not successful on their own. It is only by the presence of the element of bhakti, everything else becomes successful in this material world. On their own, nothing gives success. So like that. తపస్వినో దానపర యశస్వినో మనస్వినో మంత్రవిదా సుమంగళ క్షేమం న విందంతి వినాయ దర్పణం తస్మై సుభద్ర సర్వసే నమో నమః. క్షేమం నా విందంతి వినాయ దర్పణం. Without offering to the Supreme Lord whatever we do, tapasya, dana, yashasvi, manasvi, mantravida, any other activity that we do, if we don't offer them to Supreme Lord with bhakti sentiment, then they do not lead to kshema. It's like that. Even 11th canto also there is a verse. Bhagavad Bhakti Hinasya Jati Shastram Japastapha Apranasya Deyasya Mandanam Lokaranjanam. So whatever we may do expertly in this world, if without bhakti, they are all like the decorations on the dead body. Apranasya Deyasya Mandanam Lokaranjanam. So that is not so much appreciated. The decorations on the dead body are not so much appreciated. So like that. Bhakti is like the life force. Without bhakti, remaining all are decorations on the dead body only.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, can you please give the verse number which reference you 11th canto?
Even I also don't remember what was the verse
Okay.
number. I do remember the verse only.
No, it's okay. You just tell me the beginning again, please.
Bhagavad Bhakti Hinasya Jati Shastram Apranaseva Devasya Mandanam Lokarajnanam. It is from 11th canto, Bhagavad Bhakti Hinasya. If you type, you will get it.
Okay. Thank you, bro.
Shreyasam api sarvesham Atmahi श्रेयसामपि सर्वेषाम् आत्मा हि अवधिर् अर्थतः सर्वेषामपि भूतानां हरिर् आत्मा आत्मात्मदा प्रियः. Please read the translation.
Factually, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the original source of all self-realization. Consequently, the goal of all auspicious activities, karma, jnana, yoga, and bhakti, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Yeah. Practically speaking, the Jivatma is the goal of all auspicious activities. Atma is avadi, the ultimate end of all that we do. Supposed to be the understanding of Jivatma, understanding of Jivatma's relationship with the Supreme Lord. That should be the ultimate goal of all that we do in this material world. Practically speaking, the Jivatma is the goal of all auspicious activities. Shreyasam api sarvesham. The ultimate Shreya is to understand that understand Jivatma's sambandha with the Paramatma. But the Supreme Lord is the Atma of all Jivatmas. So if the Jivatma is the ultimate goal, but Paramatma, the Supreme Lord is the Atma of all Jivatmas. So when he is pleased, he gives realization of himself. So by all our activities, when we please the Supreme Lord, he will give the realization of not only Jivatma, but also give the realization of himself. Complete realization we will get. So that means doing all the activity that we are supposed to do in this material world are meant to realize the Jivatma. But when we offer all those activities as an offering to Supreme Lord, the Supreme Lord will easily give the realization of Jivatma as well as Paramatma. So like that. This verse explained the logic for saying that all processes are useless without bhakti. The goal of all sadhanas of auspiciousness is the Atma, since their purpose is to satisfy the Atma. But the Supreme Lord is the Atma of all beings, is the Paramatma of all individual Atmas, since all Jivas are his Tatastha Shakti. If the Lord is pleased by pure bhakti, then he gives himself. Then what to speak of understanding of Jivatma? If we realize the Paramatma, then understanding of Jivatma becomes subsidiary. That's why the Shruti says, Nayamatma pravachanena labhyo. Nayamatma pravachanena labhyo. Na medaya na budaya shrutena. Na bahuda shrutena. Emai visha. Eme vaisha vrunute tena labhyas. Tasyaita atma vrinute tanum swayam. It says that this is from Kata Upanishad. It says that the Lord cannot be attained by discussion, pravachan, or by intelligence, medaya, or by study of the Vedas, bahuda shrutena, but rather reveals himself to that person whom he chooses. Ema, ena, eme vaisha vrinute tena labhyas. Tasyaisa atma vrinute tanusvam. Whom the Lord chooses to give the understanding. Only he will get the understanding, not someone who endeavors day and night. So like that. So this is about how one can easily attain the understanding of the Supreme Lord. That is only by getting the attention of the Supreme Lord. By all our activities, if we please the Supreme Lord with his attention, we can get realization of the Supreme Lord very easily. Just as karma and jnana must be mixed with bhakti to get results. So the questioner is telling that if karma and jnana are supposed to give results, it should be mixed with bhakti. Then why don't you say that bhakti also should be mixed with karma and jnana to get results? Since the scriptures say that one must make atonement if one omits to perform nitya karmas, the daily obligatory rituals, varnashram duties, aimed at pleasing the devatas, sages, and pitrus. The next verse answers. So you are talking so much about the pleasing the Supreme Lord, pleasing the Supreme Lord. Then what about the pleasing? What about pleasing the devatas, pitrus, and the great sages? Rishiruna, Devaruna, Pitruna, Aptaruna, Bhutaruna. What about them? So we should also perform them along with bhakti. How can you neglect that? One may question like that. So then Narada answer to that question. Yata tarurmula nishechanena trupyanti taskanda bujopashaka प्राणोपहाराच्च ततेन्द्रियाणां तथैव सर्वार्हणमच्युतेज्या. Please read the translation.
As pouring, yeah, Mataji, continue.
As pouring water on the root of a tree energizes the trunk, branches, twigs, and everything else, and as supplying food to the stomach enlivens the senses and limbs of the body, simply worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead through devotional service automatically satisfies the demigods who are parts of that Supreme Personality.
Just as the branches and twigs are satisfied by watering the root, and just as the senses are satisfied by nourishing the life air, that means by feeding the stomach, by worshipping the Supreme Lord, all devatas worship is accomplished. So that is the understanding. The first division from the trunk of a tree is called, when that divides, it is called bhuja. When the bhuja divides, it is called upashaka. Leaves applied in this analogy. All these parts of the tree are satisfied by watering the root. Just by pouring water onto the root of the tree, the main trunk, the sub branches, twigs, leaves, flowers, fruits, everything gets nourished. We don't have to feed them individually, each and everything, individual part of the tree individually. They cannot be satisfied by pouring water on the branches or the leaves. If you only pour water on the branches or the leaves or the flowers or fruits, they don't get any strength from that. Only when the water is given to the root, the entire tree gets the strength and nourishment. So like that. So similarly, the worship of the Lord is all worship, sarvarahanam. This means that by the worship of the Lord, everyone is worshipped. All the devatas are worshipped. Well, this is acceptable if one cannot worship everyone. But if one can, then one should worship the Lord and also devatas, sages, and the pitrus. So, like that, one may say, no problem. If one does not have the facility to worship all the devatas, worship the Lord, will be satisfied. That is fine. But one who has facility, they should worship the devatas, pitrus, and sages also. What is the problem? There is no fault in watering the root, branches, and leaves. Rather, that is better. Rather, watering the root is better than simply watering to the branches and sub branches separately. An example is given to refute this argument. From nourishing the life air of all the senses, from nourishing the life air, all the senses are satisfied. That means by feeding the stomach, the life airs are nourished. Annam hi prananam prana. All our physical activities are directly depend upon prana. And prana gets nourishment when we eat and drink. Our eating and drinking gives nourishment to the prana. Our eating, drinking, and breathing. These three will nourish the prana, and prana will be able to perform physical activities with the help of the gross body. So by feeding the stomach, all the life airs are our physical body becomes strong and able to perform so many activities. If one tries to feed in food to each sense separately, they cannot be satisfied at all.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, we are not able to hear you.
Prabhuji is there online, but I think we cannot hear him.
Yeah, he can't hear us.
Mhm.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, for last 3-4 minutes we couldn't hear anything.
And I also did not speak anything because there is power gone here.
Oh,
And I connected to data. The Wi-Fi also gone because power gone, Wi-Fi also gone.
okay.
I also did not speak anything. You are able to see the slides?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Uh, now you are able to see the slides?
Yes,
We
Prabhuji,
are
we
able
could
to see,
hide,
Prabhuji.
we couldn't hear you.
Okay, okay. So we were discussing that by feeding the stomach, the food, our 10 pranas are nourished. When the 10 pranas are nourished, different body limbs of our gross body will be able to perform various activities. Instead, if we start feeding to the eyes or nostril or the ears, they will be damaged. That is not a proper thing. That's what it is said. Rather, from nourishing the life air, all the senses are satisfied. If one tries to feeding food to each sense, they cannot be satisfied at all. Rather, the eye will become blind. If you start feeding to the eyes become blind and the ear becomes deaf. It is actually a fault on our part. So here, Narada Muni is speaking onto the 10 Pracetas. I mentioned also in one of the previous chapter that the Pracetas are an example of Ananya Bhakti. So the teachings of Narada Muni unto Pracetas also orienting towards Ananya Bhakti. At our level, we have so many other worldly duties to perform. As part of the worldly duties, we may also perform some rituals where the Devatas worship is also included. That is fine. But we should ultimately focusing towards to Ananya Bhakti. When we come to that platform, so there will be no more obligations to worship any Devatas or anything. So that particular theme is being presented here. So keeping that in mind, when one is able to perform, one is able to take shelter of the Supreme Lord 24/7, Sarvatmanaya Sharanam Sharanyam Gato Mukundam Parihuttartham. So for that such a person is no need to worry about worshipping the Devatas and all, etc. etc. Even if we worship the Devatas, that should be treated as the worship of the Supreme Lord in his various Vibhuti manifestations. Like Indra is a Vibhuti, Chandra is a Vibhuti, like that. These are all Vibhutis as we study in the Bhagavad Gita. So even when we worship them, we should say that, okay, I'm worshipping the Vibhuti of the Supreme Lord. So with that mood, with that mentality, that particular ritual should be accomplished. That is the understanding. Hare Krishna, I could follow the verse. This is Prabhupada actually quotes this verse many times in his purports throughout the Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita.
Yes, Prabhuji, yes.
Hmm.
Prabhuji, this one sentence now in this which is used, well, this is acceptable if one cannot worship everyone, but if
Hmm.
one can, then one should worship the Lord and also the Devatas, sages, and Pitras. So, what it means, like, means even though
That is a
we are.
question. That is a question.
Acha, okay.
The reader is asking the question, for which the answer is pranopahara tatendriyanam. Oh, if you say that, okay, we can worship the devatas also here and everyone along with Lord Vishnu worship also, then says that, what is the use if you start feed the mouth, that is a proper thing. If you start feeding to the eyes and ears, they will become blind and deaf. Is that good thing? So like that.
Okay. But does this mean, Prabhuji, that like the devotees who are engaged or who are continuously engaged in the service of the Lord and apart from the Lord, they have no desire to worship anyone else. They may
Yes,
not
yes.
worship the Pitras and Shraddha ceremonies and all. Is it like that? Or like,
Yes, yes, that's what I'm saying. Na? This is an example of Ananya Bhakti. If somebody has come to the platform of Ananya Bhakti, they don't have to worship any devatas, any pitrus.
No, but Prabhuji, like means I'm trying to understand it at how it can be implementable at the practical level because we are sadhakas. We don't
So
know
that's
now
what
what.
I'm saying. At our practical level, we are supposed to worship the devatas also. But while worshipping the devatas, we should see that I am worshipping the so and so vibhuti of the Supreme Lord. I am worshipping the hands of the Supreme Lord, worshipping Indra. So like that. That will be mentioned in the next canto. How Bharata Maharaj worshipping all the devatas with what mentality. So that kind of mentality we should cultivate.
So, but that is if one has desire, they may. It is like that, na? Means we
It's
should.
not about desire. It is about yadyat acharati shrestha tatateva itaro jana. Not to create chaos in the society. Since we are living in the society, so we also need to follow the society norms.
Okay. But
We
in case.
cannot create the disruption to the culture.
Okay.
Hmm.
But if such society compulsions are not there for somebody, one may not do. Na? Means,
It's not about society compulsion, it is about the individual nature. If one is already on the platform of Ananya Bhakta, then they don't have to do. Whether society compulsion is there or not there. So we need to examine, are we on the platform of Ananya Bhakti?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes,
But
Mataji.
if we are not on the platform of Ananya Bhakti and we have
Hmm.
already worshipping before other deities,
Hmm.
so we continue to worship them,
See,
or
that's what
we
I'm saying. See, the worship of the other deities should not be done treating them equal to Lord Vishnu. We should treat them as senior Vaishnavas. So yesterday we had celebrated this festival, the appearance day of
Saraswati Thakur.
Srila Bhaktisiddhanta
Bhakti.
Thakur. So like that, even worship of the Devatas we should treat like that. They are also wonderful devotees. They are also on the path back home, back to Godhead.
Okay.
So see, the problem is treating the Devatas on par with Lord Vishnu is the problem.
Yes.
Otherwise, worshipping Devatas is like worshipping our senior devotees. There is no harm in that. And we are
Yeah.
worshipping them to give us bhakti only. We are not worshipping them to give us fulfill our material desires.
Yes.
So there
Thank you.
is no harm in that.
But overly, if Prabhuji somebody does not feel like doing they like suppose Navratra comes or Ganpati comes, one doesn't feel like doing it, one may not do it, na Prabhuji, like the
No
whole
problem.
like,
You don't have to do at home. At the same time, you should not discourage others who are doing. At the same time, you
yeah,
should not discourage them. No,
right.
there is no compulsion that you should do it. No, what I'm saying, some basic things what we are supposed to do. I'm from that point of view. I'm saying
Okay.
not that every festival we may not be able to celebrate, but when somebody is celebrating, we can go and offer namaskar and come back. Why not?
Ha, yeah, that is right.
That we
Yeah.
can do. We can go. We can visit the temple and then offer namaskar and come. But some compulsory duties like housewarming ceremony is there, marriage ceremony is there, and Shraddha ceremony there. Such kind of things need to be performed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did the Shraddha rites for
Ah.
his father, na, so
Yes.
we
Yes.
should,
Yes. 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 So we need to spiritualize all those activities. When we are doing those, we should worship, perform them in connection to Lord Vishnu, not independent to Lord Vishnu. That is the only thing.
yeah. And Shraddha also
When the
can,
people in general do it, they do it as an independent thing. So उनके लिए विष्णु का कुछ concept ही नहीं रहता है उधर.
yeah.
So that we should avoid.
Prabhuji, while Shraddha also can be performed like when we are offering the ancestors the Krishna Prasad, they will
Hmm.
get the benefit in their wherever they are. With that understanding, also the Shraddha can we can
That
perform.
is that should be done. That is actually right understanding.
Yeah,
That should be done.
means rather than giving to Brahmanas and things like that, means we
Hmm.
may give or we can give. That is not the
Hmm.
thing. But if we can give to Vaishnavas and temple, so it is directly connected to the Lord itself.
Yes, yes. Even that is not complete. Many times now in our temples also doing that Shraddha Paksha, many people sponsor. That is not complete. They should also do it their respective homes also. Or they should go to some holy place and do it. Then it becomes complete. Just by feeding some brahmanas or some devotees in the temple, that is not complete. Or
Okay.
they think that, okay, who will take all the risk of going here and there? Ah, let me sponsor 10,000 rupees. Fine, that's enough. That is not proper and that is not complete.
You mean that should be given to that crow and things like that?
Whatever the traditional procedure need to be followed. It should be followed in a Vaishnava way.
Okay. Yeah.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Abhi, they have given us everything. They have given us good education, good learning, so many relatives, friends, and the family inheritance, the wealth and all. And we don't have time half day in a year.
It is not about the time, Prabhuji. Means it is not that I'm supporting those who do like that. But what I mean is, if the Vaishnavas are fed, that punya will definitely help that ancestor.
No, no, do it in a Vaishnava way only. No, what is the problem?
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Unless until one is on the platform of Ananya Bhakta, it is better to perform all these things, not to create chaos in the society. To set a good example, right example to the people in general in the society. So it is like that.
Okay. Thank you.
यतैव सूर्यात् प्रभवन्ति वारः पुनश्च तस्मिन् प्रविशन्ति काले भूतानि भूमौ स्थिरजङ्गमानि तथा हरौ एव गुणप्रवाः. Please read.
During the rainy season, water is generated from the sun, and in due course of time, during the summer season, the very same water is again absorbed by the sun. Similarly, all living entities, moving and inert, are generated from the earth, and again, after some time, they all return to the earth as dust. Similarly, everything emanates from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and in due course of time, everything enters into Him again.
Yeah. Just as water arises from the sun and again enters the sun in due course of time. So that means water is getting evaporated and forming clouds, and also in the rainy season there is rain, and again water again evaporate in the summer. Like that cycle. And just as animals and plants arise from the earth and enter the earth, that means our human body, animal body are maintained from the earth. It is earth only which is giving green grasses, vegetables, fruits, and flowers, etc. By eating them, we are nourishing our body. At the time of death, again the body merges back into the earth. Somebody might be buried, somebody might be burnt. In either case, again the gross body will be rejoining the earth. The world made up of gunas. Similarly, the world made up of the gunas arises from the Lord and enters him. The universe in which we are living, it is manifested from the Supreme Lord at the time of creation. Again, it will enter back into him only. It all belongs to him only. Nothing ours. So like that. Two examples are given to show that the Lord is the root of everything. How the Lord is the source and root of everything. Janmadasya yataha. Just as the water comes from the sun during the monsoon season and enters the sun during the summer seasons. And just as the living beings, their gross bodies arise from the earth, that means they are maintained from the earth. When we come out of the womb of the mother, we are like infant, 1 kilogram. But by feeding on the cow milk and fruits, grains, our body is nourished. Sometimes it becomes more than 100 kilograms also. At death, again that 100 kilogram weight body again merges back into the earth and returns to the earth. Similarly, the world made up of the gunas arises and returns to the Supreme Lord. The universe actually belongs to Supreme Lord. Nothing is ours. So this is a verse of detachment. नारद मुनि is telling that हम सोच रहे हैं ये घर हमारा है, ये जमीन हमारा है, बैंक बैलेंस हमारा, ये हमारा वो हमारा, कुछ भी नहीं. They are given to us, they will be taken from us. The body in which we are residing is also not ours. It is given and maintained by the earth, and it will be taken back by the earth itself. Nothing comes with us. It is a kind of verse of detachment. So since everything is arising from the Supreme Lord, everything must be used in the service of the Supreme Lord. That is the unspoken words. Since everything rising from the Supreme Lord, everything belongs to Him, and everything should be employed in His service. So that kind of temperament does not bind in this material world. So like that. एतत् पदं तज्जगदात्मना परं सकृद्विभातं सवितुर्यथा प्रभा यथा सबो जाग्रति सुप्तशक्तयो द्रव्यक्रियाज्ञानविदा प्रमात्यया.
Just as the sunshine is non-different from the sun, the cosmic manifestation is also non-different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Personality is therefore all-pervasive within this material creation. When the senses are active, they appear to be part and parcel of the body. But when the body is asleep, their activities are unmanifest. Similarly, the whole cosmic creation appears different and yet non-different from the Supreme Person.
Mhm. The material universe arises from the form of the Lord, from the Mahavishnu. Just as the rays, sun rays, shine from the sun. Only as long as there is sun in the sky, we are able to see the sun rays all around. Similarly, as long as Mahavishnu is there, there is the manifestation of material universes. And just as the senses, which disappear during sleep, with no differentiation of the sense object, sense and sense devata, become manifested in the waking state. So the example is that as long as Mahavishnu is glancing upon Prakriti, the material universe are being maintained. When he stops glancing on Prakriti, everything is withdrawn. Our the understanding is throughout the daytime, we walk, we speak, we smell, we touch, we see, we hear. All these things are happening. But in the night time, when we when we go to deep sleep, none of our senses function. We don't speak, we don't hear, we don't touch, we don't smell, and we don't taste, we don't walk, we don't give and collect things in the sleep. Though they are all there, they all become inactive. Suptadruk. Similarly, the universe also sometimes becomes active, sometimes becomes inactive. It's like that. This is just an example of the continuation of the previous verse. The universe arrives throughout, throughout the day. When there is sun, there are sun rays. There is light all around. In the night time, there is no sun in the sky. There will be no sunlight. There is no sun rays. So like that. So two examples are given to explain as that. So as long as Lord wants, the creation will be there. And when Lord does not want, there will be no creation. So we may say that I have so much power to do this, that, but no, Lord is the ultimate controller. In front of his control, our control is insignificant. So like that. Nardamuni is indicating our temporary nature. The previous verse talked about Vairagya. This verse talks about the temporary nature of the material existence. Therefore, do not become attached to this place. So like that. यथा अभ्रतमप्रकाशा भवन्ति भूपा न भवन्ति अनुक्रमात् एवं परे ब्रह्मणि शक्तयस्त्वहम् रजस्तमः सत्त्वमिति प्रवाहा.
My dear kings, sometimes in the sky there are clouds, sometimes there is darkness, and sometimes there is illumination. The appearance of all this takes place consequently. Similarly, in the Supreme Absolute, the modes of passion, darkness, and goodness appear as consecutive energies. Sometimes they appear and sometimes they disappear.
So in this verse, So Narada Muni is saying that just as clouds, darkness and light appear and disappear. So normally throughout the day we have light, and in the rainy season when there are a lot of clouds, the clouds coming and going. But when there are full cloud, there is darkness. In the night time also there is darkness. They come and go in the sky in succession. The energies of Rajas, Tamas and Sattva appear and disappear in the Supreme Lord. The light is compared to Sattva, darkness is compared to Tamas, clouds are compared to Rajas. So especially in the rainy season, there is light sometime. Then suddenly the clouds start coming one by one. Then when all the clouds come together, there is entire darkness. Even it is daytime also there is darkness. So like that the three modes keep changing. How can the Lord who is beyond the gunas of the universe be the cause of the universe made up of the gunas? The material cause of the parties cannot be something which is not earth. So the part is made up of earth only, but the earth alone does not make the part. There is a person, there is the intervention of the potter who will convert the mud into the pot. So it's like that. So same way, Lord also intervenes in utilizing the modes in the matter of creating and maintaining the universe. And how can the Lord be without change at the material cause of the universe? Clouds, darkness, and light appear and disappear in the sky by the power of the sun. But nothing will happen to sun. Sun will be remaining there only. Sun is above. So when there is nothing obstructing, there is sunlight. When the clouds come in between, wherever clouds are there, there is no sunlight. But other places there is sunlight. When there are clouds all over in the just when it is going to become rainy season. So the sunlight is not there. That doesn't mean that sun is not there. Though sun is there, but from our point of view, we are covered by the clouds. That's why we don't see the sun or sunlight. The same way, the Lord is employing the three modes and performing all the activities of the creation, maintenance, and annihilation. So that doesn't mean that Lord is covered by three modes. He is situated beyond the three modes, just like sun is situated above the clouds. So like that. So this is a verse from 10th canto 84th chapter, text number 33. There also same meaning is mentioned. People in general think that the Lord is covered by his own creations of prana and other material elements, just as one may think that the sun is covered by the clouds, snow, or an eclipse. In all these three conditions, when there are clouds, when there is snow, when there is eclipse, the sun, we are covered from our vision of seeing sun, but sun is there, situated in the sky as he is. Similarly, though so many things are happening around us, the Lord is situated transcendental to everything. He is not disturbed by any of the modes. The word uparaga refers to the covering of ignorance on the sinful jiva. So we are being covered by them, either by clouds or by snow or eclipse. Sun is not affected by these things. Similarly, the three modes are covering us, not the Supreme Lord. He is situated beyond the influence of three modes. So Narada Muni is giving some tattva here in these verses, some technical details is presenting. So it says that, O king, though the sun is situated beyond the clouds and the snow, it is their material cause. But the sun is the cause of clouds as well as the snow, and he remains unchanged. Similarly, the Lord, though situated beyond the gunas, but he is the cause of the three gunas, whose transformation creates the manifestation of the universe. The universe is created, maintained, and annihilated, but the Lord remains unchanging. That is the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord. So it is like that. Just as the sun, though different from the clouds and snow, is also clouds and snow because of being their cause. So the Lord also, though different from the world, is also the world. The snow and the clouds are manifested because of the sun. When there is no summer sun, there is no water is evaporated and there are no clouds formed. And sometimes the clouds rain, sometimes the clouds come down in the form of snow because of the weather condition. So if there is no sun, there will be no cloud, no snow. So like that. Similarly, if there is no Lord, there will be no universe. So like that. So thus, simultaneously, Lord is same and different from the material creation. So like that. So Lord's Sambandha and Lord's transcendental position in comparison to these material phenomena, both are indicated by Narada Muni. In this manner, the world appears and disappears, just as the clouds and darkness and even the contaminated light situated far from the sun are not the swarupa of the pure shining sun. Similarly, Rajoguna, Tamoguna, and even Satvaguna are not the swarupa of the Lord, who is pure knowledge. So it says that anyway, we can understand that the clouds and darkness are not sun, but the sunlight is also in one sense, not the sun completely. Though the sunlight is coming from sun, sunlight is different from the sun. Similarly, the Satvaguna, the Lord is closely connected to Satvaguna, still Lord is separate from the Satvaguna. He has nothing to do with Tamaguna, Rajoguna, as well as Satvaguna. Because the Lord is situated in his own Sarupa, which is situated in pure Sattva, Shuddha Sattva. So that is understanding. According to Narada Muni, the Supreme Lord is the material cause of the universe, made up of gunas, and he is also unchanging. He does not go through any transformation because he had created the material universes. There is a verse also spoken the same way in the Canto 6, chapter 9, text number 34. So I think this is the verse comes in relation to Chitraketu Maharaj and Urutrasura. It is difficult to understand that you, though engaged in pastimes in the spiritual world, without a material shelter, without actions in a material body, without the assistance of the devatas, without material gunas, create, maintain, and destroy the universe made up of the gunas, without transformation of your sarupa, though you are the material elements. So, my dear Lord, though you expand yourself in the form of Prakriti, Purusha, and all the material elements, but still, without the assistance of any of the devatas, you alone create, maintain, and annihilate unlimited material universes. That's why you are called as Swarad, the supremely independent person. So it is like that. So Lord alone can do all these things and still remain indifferent to all these things. The same thing the personified Vedas also speak in the 87th chapter of the 10th canto. They say that this perceivable world is identified with the Supreme Lord because the Supreme Brahman is the ultimate foundation of all that exists and he remains unchanged as all created things are generated from it and at last dissolved into it. Just as clay remains unchanged by the products made from it and again merged with it. Just as clay remains unchanged by the products made from it and again merged with it. Thus, it is towards you alone that the Vedic sages direct all their thoughts, words, and activities. After all, how can the footsteps of the men fail to touch the earth on which they live? So, as long as we are living in this world, especially in the Martyaloka, our feet are always touching upon the earth, which is the source of our existence. Our body is nourished by Mother Earth. So, we are in constant touch with the Mother Earth. Similarly, the Supreme Lord who is nourishing all of us, how can we be indifferent to Him? We should also be in touch with Him always. All our activities should be directed to Him only. So basically, Lord's sambandha with everything that is existing in this world has been indicated in all these references, in all these shlokas. So here is a verse from Gajendra's prayers. Gajendra also says same thing. Namo namaste kilakaranaya nishkaranaya adbutakaranaya Sarvagamamnaya Maharnavaya Namo Pavargaya Parayanaya. Gajendra says, I offer repeated respects to the cause of everything, Akila Karanaya, who has no Karana, who has no cause, Nishkaranaya, who is the astonishing cause without change, Adbhuta Karanaya, who is the great ocean of Pancharatra and Vedas, proving his nature. Sarva Agama Amnaya Maharnavaya. Maharnava means a great ocean of all the Agamas and Amnayas. Who is the very form of liberation. Apavargaya. And who is the shelter of the greatest devotees. And Parayanaya is the shelter of all the Narayana Parayanas. So in that way. According to Gajendra, the astonishing nature of the Lord as creator is that though he is the material cause, he remains unchanged. If one accepts that he does change, that it would not be astonishing, since it will be a logical condition. Sri Swami says that Adbhuta Karanaya means though the Lord is the cause, he does not accept transformations such as earth, etc. Though he is the cause, but he himself does not change. He himself remains independent. His energies manifest in the form of all the elements and all that we see and that we come across, all that we live with, and they will again reunite with the Supreme Lord. Though Lord creates everything, he remains transcendental and he remains independent. He remains unchanging, eternal as he is. That is the understanding. Hare Krishna, you could follow. So many references were there.
Hare Krishna, yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
So finally, Narada Muni kind of concluding in couple of verses. He says that Tenaikamatmanamashesha dehinam kalam pradhanam purusham paresham swatejasadvasta guna pravaham atmaikabhavena bhajadvamadda.
Because the Supreme Lord is the cause of all causes, He is the supersoul of all individual living entities, and He exists as both the remote and immediate cause. Since He is aloof from the material emanations, He is free from their interactions and is Lord of material nature. You should therefore engage in His devotional service, thinking yourself qualitatively one with Him.
Because the Lord is the cause of all things, you should worship him directly with one bhava in the mind. Atma Eka Bhavena, the Supreme Lord with the soul of unlimited jivas, who is the indirect cause called time, the material cause called Prakriti, who is the jiva and who is completely free from the influence of the material gunas by his power. So Lord's connection with all that we come across has been established from many verses. Here is kind of concluding. He says that it is the Lord who is the uh, who is the soul of unlimited jivas and who is the Kala, who is Prakriti, who is Jiva, and though he is the source of the three gunas, but he is free from the influence of the three gunas by his transcendental power. Since Lord is everything, using everything, one should worship the Supreme Lord with one bhava. Atma Eka Bhavena. Paresham Bhajadva Madda. One should completely engage in the service of the Supreme Lord. Because since everything is given by the Lord, everything belongs to Lord. Everyone says everything is the Lord. So everything should be used in the service of the Supreme Lord. So like that Narada Muni is telling. Because the Lord is cause of everything, he is also time, which is the indirect cause. He is also Pradhana or Prakriti, which is the material cause. And he is also the Purusha, who is the doer, who is the enjoyer ultimately. So everything should be used in the service of the Supreme Lord. So like that Narada Muni is kind of indicating the complete sambandha of everything in relation to Supreme Lord. Therefore, please worship him directly, who is the cause of all causes. This becomes worship of all the devatas and all the pitrus. Yada taror mula nisheshanena, same thing. By your mind, with full concentration, or by the mind with one particular bhava, worship him. Jiva Goswami says that one should worship with one mood, such as dasya, unmixed with other bhavas. If you remember in Bhagavad Gita also, in two places, once in the 10th chapter, once in the 15th chapter, Lord Krishna also says same thing. So the first verse is Aham sarvasya prabho mattam sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajanti mam buddha bhava samanvita. He who knows that everything is manifested and maintained by the Supreme Lord will engage in service of Supreme Lord completely. And the last but one verse of the 15th chapter also, Lord Krishna tells that iti imam yo janati. So janati purushottamam. So sa sarvavit sarvabhavena bharata. So he who knows the Supreme Lord, as it is mentioned in the previous verses, will ultimately engage in the service of the Supreme Lord sarvabhavena bharata. In all respects, manasa vacha karmana, there is 100% engagement. That is what is the expected result of knowing the Supreme Lord. He who knows the Supreme Lord, default engage in the service of Supreme Lord. So that is the understanding. So therefore, understand the Supreme Lord, understand sambandha of the Supreme Lord with the material existence, and engage in once in the service of the Supreme Lord. So like that, Narada Muni is indicating through these verses. Hare Krishna, able to follow?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Daya sarva bhuteshu santushtayena kena va sarvendriyopashantya cha tushyati asu janardana.
By showing mercy to all living entities, being satisfied somehow or other, and controlling the senses from sense enjoyment, one can very quickly satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Janardana.
Yeah, pleasing the Lord is not very difficult thing. So here Narada Muni gives a easy process. The Lord is very quickly pleased. So Tushyati Ashu Janardana. Generally, we hear about Lord Shiva being Ashutosh. Lord Shiva gets be pleased very easily. But here Narada Muni said that even Lord Janardana also gets very quickly pleased by a person who shows mercy to all beings, Daya Sarvabhuteshu, by being satisfied by whatever comes of its own accord, Santushta Yenakenava, and by controlling all the senses. Sarvendriya Upa Shantyacha. So by following these three things, one can easily please the Supreme Lords. Here Narada Muni mentions a few favorable qualities in worshipping the Supreme Lord. So the same verse, we can also see, in general, these three things should be followed by everyone. But with respect to the Varnashrama system also, we can distinguish. So Daya Sarvabhuteshu, it is for Vanaprastha and Sannyas. So showing compassion to one and all, because they are already gone through entire life, they are already matured. They should distribute Krishna consciousness to one and all, out of compassion to all the living entities. That is their Daya and all Sarvabhuteshu. And a Gurhastha should be satisfied with whatever they have. Santushta Ena Kenava. If there is no satisfaction, they work hard. They hanker for more and more objects for which they need to work very hard. Their entire time goes in working hard only. They don't have any time left for devotional activities. And for Brahmachari, Sarva Indriya Upashantyacha. Brahmachari is supposed to expected to keep all the 11 senses under control. That should be the primary activity of a Brahmachari. So this is how at different levels also, if they implement these activities individually, they can please the Lord very easily. So like that. All together also we can take, independently also we can take. Apahata sakalaisha namalatmani aviratam edita bhavanopahuta nija jana vasagatam gatvam atmanonyam na sarasi chidravad akshara satam hi.
Being completely cleansed of all material desires, the devotees are freed from all mental contamination. Thus, they can always think of the Lord constantly and address Him very feelingly. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, knowing Himself to be controlled by His devotees, does not leave them for a second, just as the sky overhead never becomes invisible.
Constantly beckoned by the increasing devotion present in his devotees' pure minds, which have destroyed all material desires. The Lord, knowing that he is controlled by his devotees, does not leave them, just as space does not leave one side. So Narada says that for such a devotee who pleases the Lord, Lord is always with them in the core of their heart. He never leaves them. So by this method of bhakti, the Lord gives himself to the devotees. This has been concluded previously. Now the characteristics of the Lord are described. The devotee should have a pure mind. The heart should be pure. Heart means man, buddhi, ahankara, chetana, all the four subtle elements should be pure. Devoid of any material desire. Apahata sakala eshana. The Lord is constantly called by increasing devotion in the pure minds devoid of material desires. And that bhakti should be constantly increasing. Then Lord feels happy to stay there. So एक बार भगवान को invite किया, then we constantly meditating on material desires. Lord does not feel like to stay there. So like that. The devotees call, O Hari, O Govinda, sole object of my life. So this is their constant prayer. O Hari, O Govinda, sole object of my life. For such kind of devotees only Lord stays in their hearts. The Lord, being called, brought close, does not leave, just as space does not leave one's presence. Knowing that, sorry,
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, sorry.
okay. So, knowing that his nature is to be controlled by the devotees to preserve his own conviction, he stays with them. That Lord says that I am controlled by my devotees. When a devotee, such kind of devotee comes in front of the Lord remains with them only. Just to prove the statement true. So that's how Lord becomes subservient of the devotees. So unto such Lord who will not worship, saying like that, Narada Muni concludes his instructions. Na bhajati kumanishinam sahijam harir adanatmadana priyo rasajna shrutadana kula karmanam madaire vidadati papam akinchaneshu sastu.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes very dear to those devotees who have no material possessions but are fully happy in possessing the devotional service of the Lord. Indeed, the Lord relishes the devotional activities of such devotees. Those who are puffed up with material education, wealth, aristocracy, and fruitive activity are very proud of possessing material things, and they often deride the devotees. Even if such people offer the Lord worship, the Lord never accepts it.
So it is like that. Lord is pleased with the worship of the devotees, not by the non-devotees. The Lord who accepts devotees who have no wealth except the wealth of the Lord, Akinchana Vittaya, does not accept the worship offered by the persons with contaminated minds, who throw insults at the devotees who have no material possessions because of their pride in their education, wealth, family, and activities. The devotees in general are poverty stricken, but the other wealthy people who are endowed with pride of their education, pride of their wealth, pride of their family members, pride of their activities, they constantly insult the devotees. Even if such kind of people, such kind of people, if they worship the Lord says, and Narada Muni says that Lord does not accept the worship of such people. That means Worship should accompany with the respect of other devotees and other living entities. If you can worship on one side and insult another side, it is not proper. Though controlled by the devotees, the Lord does not accept the worship offered by those with no devotion. The Lord has dear devotees who have no wealth, but who have the Lord as their wealth. Atmadana, devotees consider the Supreme Lord to be their wealth. Or he had the devotees who are dear treasure for himself, being without material desires. Giving up attachment to wealth and sons, they place their possessive feelings in the Lord alone. So Lord becomes their life and soul for the devotees. They are not interested in the material acquisition, material wealth and material possessions. The Lord knows the prema rasa of his devotees. Persons of wrong mentality are then described. They commit sin toward the devotees by their pride in education, wealth, family, and various actions like sacrifice, etc. They may do all these things, but they always insult the devotees. So such kind of worship is not accepted by the Supreme Lord. The Narada Muni again says the same thing in the 11th canto. While speaking to Vasudev, he says in one of the verses that with pride in wealth, power, good birth, education, renunciation, beauty, strength, and performance of rituals, one becomes foolish and cruel and disrespect the devotees and also the Supreme Lord. Janmaishwarya Shutashribir Edamana Madapuman Naivarhate Kitabidatum Vai Twamakinchana Gocharam. So a person endowed with material facilities generally will not respect the Lord and his devotees. But Akinchana Gocharam, the one who is impoverished, will always take shelter of the Supreme Lord. Because for them, the Lord is their wealth. They are not after the material wealth. So like that. So Nardamni finally giving a kind of comparison. Who will not take shelter of the Supreme Lord? Why they will not take shelter of the Supreme Lord? Where residence is also presenting. Finally, he says, Sriyam Anucharatim Tadartitasna Dvipadapatnin Vibudam Shayaswapurna Nabhajati Nijabhrutyavargatantra Katam Amum Udvisrajet Puman Kritagnya.
Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead is self sufficient, he becomes dependent on his devotees. He does not care for the goddess of fortune, nor for the kings and demigods who are after the favors of the goddess of fortune. Where is that person who is actually grateful and will not worship the personality of Godhead?
So select that. Finally, this is the last verse spoken by Narada Muni. He says that the Lord, being complete in his Swarupa, does not care for the sum total of all wealth, which is worshipped by those desiring all wealth, and does not care for those desiring even a little wealth, or for human kings or the devatas. He is dependent on his devotees. How could the devotee reject this kind of Lord even a little? Lord is not interested in the wealth of this entire world or the people who possess the wealth, but is only interested in the devotees. How could a devotee give up that Lord who gives himself to the devotees? So finally, so this is the Lord's heart is being revealed by the Narada Muni. Just as the devotees have possessiveness of the Lord and no one else, the Lord also has similarly had the possessiveness of the devotees. This dependence on the devotee is described in this verse. The Lord does not care for the personification of all wealth, who is followed by persons desiring increase in their wealth, or for those who want a little wealth, or kings or devatas. If you see all over Mumbai, in every shop there is Lakshmi Devi photo. Everyone worships Lakshmi Devi every day morning before starting their business, hoping that today Lakshmi Devi show her glance and they will get profits. So the entire world is after Lakshmi Devi, but the Supreme Lord is indifferent to Lakshmi Devi. So in that way, this is because though he is complete in himself, in his Swarupa, he is dependent on his devotees. This dependence of the Lord on the devotee is actual, not a show. How can one reject such kind of a Lord even for a second. So in that way. Just as it has been mentioned that the Lord knows the prema rasa of the devotee also knows the prema rasa of the Lord. These are two knowers of the rasa in this world. Only the Lord knows and the devotee knows the rasa, prema rasa, and no one else in this world know about it. With a desire to please the Lord, who is the object of intense natural possessiveness, that prema takes shelter of the devotees. Because that desire to please the Lord is without motive, without any selfish motive. Though the Lord is complete in his happiness, the desire to please the Lord gives great satisfaction to the Supreme Lord. Though Lord is Atma Rama, but when a devotee wants to please the Lord, that gives more pleasure to the Supreme Lord. This is the causeless nature of prema, which is well known in the Shrutis and Smritis. How can rasa be artificial? How can this prema rasa be artificial and material? It is completely spiritual. Thus, it should be concluded that the Lord's nature of being controlled by prema is intrinsic nature of the Supreme Lord. Prema accepts the devotee as its shelter. Prema takes shelter of the devotees, and by which the prema tries to give happiness to the Supreme Lord. So, thus, the Lord is only controlled by the devotee and devotee's prema, nothing else. Therefore, knowing this and understanding it, who will not worship the Supreme Lord? So, that is the final astonishing statement of Narada Muni.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, here it was mentioned that desire to please the Lord attracts the Lord. That means even if the devotee is not completely successful in doing the seva, but he is doing with the desire to please the Lord, still Lord will accept it or like it.
Yes, yes, yes. Because Lord is already self-satisfied. He does not need anyone else's this thing. But still, when a devotee makes a little endeavor to please the Lord becomes satisfied with that. Even this can be seen in the home also. That when small kids do something for the pleasure of the parents feel unlimited happiness. So same thing with respect to Lord also. So these were the instructions of Narada Muni. So we discussed. We have few more minutes. Just briefly browse through the remaining verses. These are like concluding session. What happened afterwards? Maitreya Uvacha. Maitreya says, O king, after having the Pracetas heard uh, the topics related to the Supreme Lord, Narada, the son of Brahma, departed for Brahmaloka. Of course, Narada spoke these things and also spoke many other things, but in the Bhagavatam, only these many things are being presented. So Narada spoke many other things also. As you remember, in the beginning of the fourth canto, it is said that Narada Muni talked about the glories of Dhruva Maharaj in the assembly of Pracetas. So that's where the discussion started. Then Vidura asked, who are the Pracetas, where and when Narada Muni spoke to them about Dhruva Maharaj. It is here Narada Muni speaks about Dhruva Maharaj too. Having said about like this, so Narada Muni might have given an example. An example of such kind of wonderful devotee is Dhruva, who worship the Lord completely, something like that. So though details are not mentioned here, but we have to understand that Narada Muni spoke many more things, but the important instructions are given to us in this section of the Bhagavatam. And then Narada Muni went to Brahmaloka, the abode of Lord Brahma, his own father. Then what the our Pracetas did? Te pitan mukha niryatam yasholoka malapaham harer nisamya tatpadam dhyayantas tad gatim yayo. Hearing the glories of the Lord, which destroy all sin from the mouth of Narada Muni, the great sage, the Pracetas, meditating on the feet of the Lord, tat padam dhyayanta, attained Lord's abode. Tad gatim yayo. Tat padam, tad gatim. Tat stands for the Supreme Lord, about whom our Narada Muni spoke. Narada Muni spoke about Lord Hari, and meditating on Lord Hari's lotus feet, they attained the abode of Lord Hari. They went back to spiritual world. This is how the Pracetas attained perfection. Then it is said, "Oh Vidura, have explained to you the conversation between Narada and the Pracetas, which glorified the Lord, about which you inquired. Long back in the Dhruva section, you inquired about the conversation where and when it took place. So I told all the backstories and I concluded with the conversation between Narada and the Pracetas. So in one sense, that question is answered here and Maitreya became little silent. Then what happened? Sukadeva Goswami is telling now what happened there. Sukadeva said, "Best of kings, I have described the dynasty of Uttanapada, the son of Swayambhu Manu. Now hear about the dynasty of Priyavrata." So this is how the entire dynasty of Uttanapada had completed. After the Pracetas, Daksha supposed to become the next king, but yesterday we discussed Daksha did not become the king. He went to the other side of the forest. So the dynasty of the Uttanapada is completed there. And later on, in the fifth canto, we will hear about the dynasty of Priyavrata. That he now briefly summarizes in one verse, Sukadeva Goswami. Learning knowledge of Atma from Narada, both Priyavrata and Uttanapada went to Gurukula of Narada Muni only. Though Priyavrata is the eldest son, he remained in the Gurukul in order to continue as an ascetic brahmachari. But Uttanapada came home and became king, etc. etc. So he studied about Atma Vidya from Narada Muni. After enjoying the earth, divided among his sons and attained the Lord's abode. But that Priyavrata, though remained in the Gurukul as an ascetic brahmachari, but by the request of Swayambhu Manu and Lord Brahma, he came back home. After this episode of Pracetas, when there was no one to rule over the Bhumandala, Swayambhu Manu and Lord Brahma implored Priyavrata to come home and take care of the Bhumandala. He comes home, gets married, takes care of the Bhumandala, enjoys, and then he also attends, goes back home back to Godhead. So this one verse is taken as a clue for asking a question in the next canto. Parikshit Maharaj asked a question that how is that? Ashram will come back. If one comes back, he will not go back to Godhead. Why all these contrary things are happening with Priyavrata? How is that? Like that? Parikshit Maharaj asked. So later on when we start fifth canto, that time we'll discuss in detail how it happened. Then, hearing this from Maitreya, hearing all these details from Maitreya Muni, Vidura, his emotions increasing from hearing about the Lord, with tears in his eyes, touched the feet of Maitreya with his head and mentally touched the feet of the Lord. So Vidura was hearing from third canto to fifth chapter onwards. Till now he heard, he thought it is enough, and he expressed his gratitude to Maitreya by touching his feet and also offering respect to Supreme Lord. Then Vidura spoke a couple of words and then he goes to Hastinapur. So I am Adya Mahayogin Bhavata Kaurava Karunatmana Darshitas Tamasapparo Yatra Kinchana Gohari. Vidura says, "O great yogi, being most merciful, you have today shown me the world beyond the ocean of samsara, where the Lord attains his devotee." So basically, in the third canto and fourth canto, Maitreya was talking about so many devotees who did their duties properly and eventually attained perfection and went back to Godhead, where Lord receives them. So you have shown the path back to Godhead by describing all these wonderful devotees, where the Lord attains his devotee, where Lord receives his wonderful devotees in the spiritual abode. You have shown the path back to spiritual world. Tamasa means the ocean of samsara. On the other side of the ocean of samsara resides the Lord, and who receives the devotees who goes to spiritual world. It goes without saying that the devotee attains the Lord. So Vidura told this, you have revealed me what is there on the other side of the shore. The spiritual abode, the Lord, how Lord receives his devotees and all, etc. etc. everything. So thank you very much for all these things. And now please give me leave. I have an important duty to perform. I have to go to Hastinapur and deliver my elder brother, Dhritarashtra. So with that, Vidura goes to Hastinapur. Sri Sukha Uvacha. Iti anamya tam amantrya Viduro gaja savyam Swanam didrikshu prayayau Jnatinam nirvritashaya. Offering respects to Maitreya and taking permission from Maitreya, Vidura with joyful heart, desiring to see his relatives, Sajana, departed for Hastinapura. So he goes to Hastinapura. After going to Hastinapura, what happened? That was mentioned in the first canto, 13th chapter, 14th chapter, 15th chapter. All those chapters will reveal the sequence of events. So in that way. So finally, this is the Falashruti. Etadya Shuni Adrajan Rajnam Hari Arpitatmanam Ayurdanam Yashaswasti Gatim Aishwaryamapnuyat. O King Parikshit, he who hears the story of the kings who gave themselves to the Lord, Hari Arpita Atmanam, will attain long life, wealth, fame, good fortune, and finally Lord's abode. Those who hear all these pastimes of these great devotees and also practicing their footsteps, following their footsteps, while living in this world, they will attain long life, wealth, fame, good fortune. At the end of their life, they will go back home back to Godhead. So this is the Falashruti of hearing these wonderful pastimes that are narrated in the third canto and fourth canto. Hare Krishna. So thank you very much. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananda Koti Vaishnava Bhaktivinoda ki jai.
Prabhuji,
Yes,
there
ma'am.
are few doubts. Should I call you later, like you have class now or something?
Yes. You please call me in personal.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna. So other devotees are calling me. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam.
Mataji, 1 minute I'm joining. The previous class still just stopped.